all of you for several years ago removing the sales tax on energy used in manufacturing. We were one of only 8 states in the whole country that taxed energy as an input cost used in manufacturing, and this body had the wisdom to dispense with that. And I think if you look at the timing of that, it started to be implemented in 2013, was fully implemented in 2016, and you can look at the results of the growth we've had in manufacturing since that time. It's made a big difference. But over at the Public Service Commission, we intervene. We've done that for decades, and we're the only party there representing manufacturing interests. We intervene in 3 types of cases, one of which has just started, called an Integrated Resource Plan with Georgia Power. They're looking at their portfolio of assets, their transmission, their generation, looking ahead 20 years, and all sorts of other things, renewables and the appropriate implementation of those. Then we intervene in rate cases. There'll be one in the later part of this year, which will affect all consumers across the state. And then also fuel cases are decided in a separate docket where you have sort of the pass-through fuel costs that Georgia Power incurs, and we get involved there too because our members, again, use a lot of energy. Their fuel costs can be very high. So what do we do when we intervene? Why do we do it? You just like here at the legislature, you want to be engaged in issues that matter to you, and energy matters a lot to us. So we intervene as a party. We analyze the filings. We cross-examine witnesses. We testify. We have an expert witness and consultant we've been working with for decades who does a great job for us over there. We participate in oral arguments. We file briefs, just like in a court. And then we also negotiate with other parties. We work with the commission, the staff, our friends at Georgia Power, other interveners with different interests, and try to work on consensus solutions where possible to help move the state forward. Because it's our goal to ensure not only reliability and affordability for our members, but to be an objective and positive contributor to the development of energy policy in our state to the benefit of everyone. So we look for win-win solutions over there. And then my third issue, I just wanted to talk a little bit about, a little bit more of what I think this committee is probably going to be dealing with, and that's issues on the horizon. What are we facing as a state, and what's our view of it? Well, obviously we have increasing demand on our electric grid, extraordinary growth. Just as a reminder, you know, the company Georgia Power files an integrated resource plan every 3 years according to the statute, and in my entire time there I don't recall them ever having to file an interim case between IRPs, but that's what in fact they had to do last year when their growth projections through 2031 increased by a factor of 17. So they had to scramble, they had to come up with additional resources. The good news is that those resources, the cost of those resources is more than paid by the revenue coming in. So we actually looked at the case last year as helping to put a little bit of downward pressure on rates, which goodness knows we need. We've got to be well positioned to take advantage of these trends of increasing growth because Georgia has done a great job. We're not the #1 state to do business without a lot of effort on your part and the effort of the governor and governors before him and those at the Public Service Commission. But of course with growth comes challenges. It's not the subject of this committee, but one of the main things we work on is workforce. How are we going to have enough workers to supply these new industries that are coming in? And you know, we face transportation issues, but of course ensuring adequate energy resources. The industrial growth in Georgia is strong, but as we all know, and I'm sure that I know you'll hear later today, data center growth is playing a big role in this. It's important to remember that this is based on demands and needs of consumers, including manufacturers, but also others. As we move into the artificial intelligence age, our energy demand is only going to continue to increase. And we believe that that's a good thing in some ways, but it also presents some challenges. In the current IRP case, the Commission's going to be looking at several issues, and big issues we'll be looking at. First of all, what are the appropriate growth projections? How do we know how much growth is going to be coming to this state? I wish I could give you that answer today. I wish, you know, I could predict the stock market and a lot of other things too, but it's very difficult to know exactly how much growth there's going to be. So one of the things we'll be doing is getting behind those growth projections, asking questions, trying to figure out how much of this load is going to be real. Are we estimating for enough? Are we estimating too little? It's a very difficult thing to do, and I feel some sympathy for Georgia Power having to do it. It's not an easy thing to do. What should the mix of our generation be in the future? You know, Southern Company has announced decarbonization goals, but as we see this increasing demand, we might need to be a little bit careful about getting rid of existing resources we've got that are supplying the people of Georgia. You know, what role is there to play for small modular nuclear reactors, or what about renewables? All of these things will be addressed in the case. Georgia Power's also proposed a significant amount of transmission upgrades, and so we'll be looking at that as well. The base rate case this summer will, of course, start in July, and it'll have significant issues as well that'll impact the people of Georgia. And then a fuel case next year. One of the reasons that everybody's rates are a little bit higher right now has to do with the uptick in energy costs that happened a few years ago and created an undercollection in Georgia Power's fuel cost recovery account, which means we're kind of paying off an undercollection that's the largest one I've ever seen. It varies. It goes, sometimes it's in positive, sometimes it's in the negative, but it was a little over $2 billion that we're all having to pay down, and we're still doing that and probably will into next year. So a lot of things were operating at one time to put upward pressure on rates, and I'm sure that's something this committee will hear a lot about. That's a pretty high-level summary of what we do. I want to be respectful of others' times. I want to mention also that we work with coalitions to advocate with our federal officials for sensible energy policy, and I would encourage you to do the same when you have the opportunity. One particular issue that concerns us is the lack of natural gas transportation infrastructure, the ability of this country to build pipelines that we need. We've got a lot of natural gas, but if we can't deliver it, you can't use it. So we need to find ways to liberalize the permitting process and get more transportation capacity built. So I'll just throw that in as an extra issue we're looking at. So anyway, thank you for your participation on this committee. Thank you for all this legislature does for manufacturers in our state. We're very proud to be Georgians and proud to be celebrating 125 years. So I'll be glad to, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and I'll take any questions.
Yeah, I think in respect of the very little bit amount of time that we have here, and we're trying to get as many people in as possible,
Okay.
We're going to waive questions today.
I'm all ready to speak anytime you need to.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, they want. Yeah, I was gonna, yeah, y'all are more than welcome if you want to move forward here a little bit. You don't have to stand against the wall. There's plenty of open seats. So, your choice. All right, Ben with Rayonier Advanced Materials. Thank you for being here today and being that part of what we're looking at isn't just. I've tried to make it really clear to everyone that this isn't a data center focused committee. It's an overarching committee of the needs for the next 20 years. It's a forward-looking committee. We have a lot of pieces of that, and so that's why I asked the Georgia Association of Manufacturers to come in, because I see them to be such a vital part of our economy, especially in South Georgia and rural Georgia. So thank you, and we'll go ahead and let you have the mic.
Perfect. So Chairman Thomas, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. As he said, my name is Ben Chambers, so I lead U.S. External Affairs in a global sustainability program for RYAM, or Rayonier Advanced Materials. This is just a high level of the company, 2,500 employees, 4 manufacturing facilities, 2 in the U.S., 1 in Canada, 1 in France, 2 state-of-the-art research facilities and sales offices around the world. We are a global leader in bio-based manufacturing, operating large industrial manufacturing sites, our largest being in Jessup, Georgia, Wayne County. We also have a premier R&D center there, focused on advanced biomaterials and biofuels development. We have 800 full-time employees, hundreds of contractors. We sustain thousands of forestry-related jobs, landowners, foresters, loggers, and truckers. Beyond jobs, we're a leader in just overall sustainable manufacturing. So 98 to 99% of our total energy needs are produced on site, 84% of that coming from renewables like biomass. 90% of the water that we use is treated and returned back to the natural environment. We have a stated goal of cutting our greenhouse gas emissions 40% globally by 2030. We're on track for that. And overall, our global operations support over 2 million acres of working forest. Here's a photo of the Jessup site, again, down in Wayne County, southeast Georgia, really supporting that whole forest economy of that region. I've got some of the end markets that we serve over here. Happy to answer what those are later, but I'd say the gist of it is there's over 5,000 consumer products that have trees as a raw material input to that. So we're in many of your everyday products that you would never know about. moving forward, sort of looking to the future, we view our Jessup site as a prime example of how sustainability and economic growth go hand in hand. Our Altamahaw Green Energy project is a biomass multi-hundred million dollar investment, joint venture with Beasley Green Power. This project is going to generate 70 megawatts of renewable electricity. It's going to convert, that 70 megawatts will be produced using about 950,000 to 1 million tons of forestry residuals. So essentially, instead of letting the residuals after a timber harvest lay out in the field and decay or get piled up and burned, we're going to go out and collect all that, and we're going to burn it in a state-of-the-art boiler, modernizing our power infrastructure on site and, again, supporting power needs for that region. There's still work to do on this project, but we do have strong partnerships. I know Georgia Power's in the room. We're working closely with them, Georgia Transmission, Department of Environmental Protection in the state. Great relationships with our state and local officials, and we appreciate the support that we're getting from them. We do believe that this project will deliver meaningful economic and environmental benefits for the citizens of Georgia. Beyond biomass energy, the other major project that we're looking at for the Jessup site is sustainable aviation fuel. So for any of you that have never been to a pulp mill, we'd love to host you guys sometime, show you, the industrial footprint of that facility. But one of the things we do is we're producing specialty cellulose or pulp using biomass. And so when I talk about the energy that we use, that we produce on site, that's all biomass based. It's all carbon neutral from the outset. So if you can capture that carbon and do something with it, it's potentially another viable revenue stream for us, but also we can produce great products like jet fuel. And so we're pursuing an ESAF project in both Jessup and France. We have signed an agreement with Verso Energy on evaluating biogenic CO2 and green hydrogen and how we can combine those together to produce sustainable aviation fuel. You can see the chart on the right here. That's just the future demand of how markets are expected to evolve for jet fuel. And so as fossil fuel demand pairs off with regulations, obviously the Europeans are doing a lot there to regulate it. We'll see how that evolves in the U.S. But as that grows, we think that's a big opportunity for us. These are major projects. I mean, we're talking $2 billion plus project. So the size of that would do wonders for the economy of Southeast Georgia. So I know we're in a hurry, so I'm going to jump ahead. Really, the opportunity that we have in this state with our forest economy, the project that I mentioned, our AGE, Altamahaw Green Energy, Sustainable Aviation Fuel, there's so much that can be done supporting rural Georgia. We appreciate this committee's attention and time to listen to us today. And again, I know we're in a hurry, but if you guys have questions in the future, we'd love to host you all. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We're in such a crunch for time. I can't take any questions. But there will be a follow up to this. We're going to be in off season. So, and Ben, just we are part of this committee. We are looking at I call it mining tailings. Ways we can take waste streams right now and reuse those and this sustainable aviation fuel. It looks like a really interesting thing for us to take a deeper dive into. Hopefully you all will be available to us as we're continuing this work over the off season. Yeah, thank you. Let's see here, grab my agenda. Next on the agenda is going to be Jim Keller with Mitsubishi Power. Thank you for being here today.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. So I'm here. My name is Jim Kelleher. I'm Vice President of North American Manufacturing for Mitsubishi Power, and joining me today is Joe Sticka, who is Vice President of U.S. Sales for our sales for gas turbines, new equipment. So real quick, I'll give you a quick overview of who Mitsubishi is, what we do here in Georgia, and a couple projects. I'll go through very quickly just to give you kind of the highlights of the slides. So Mitsubishi Power, we kind of do everything. It's called Mitsubishi Heavy. It's like a major company in Tokyo. It's been there over 125 years. But if you see there, annual revenue, $28 billion, 25,000 plus patents, 77,000 employees. So very, very large company into aerospace, shipbuilding. We do almost everything here, including Mitsubishi Power, transformers, generators. So net zero, our goal right now is to be, 2030, 50% less, and then net zero by 2040 is our goal for our company, across our company. So we're working very, very heavily towards that right now. So in the Americas, if you break that down here, 1.2 million square foot of manufacturing space, 1,500 suppliers. We're number one in the gas turbine market and aeroderivative market, and we have 2,900 employees. We started with 4 employees in 2002 in Florida. We were making the gas turbines in Japan, shipping them here just to service them, and today we're almost 3,000 employees. So very smart growth, very good business. This just shows you really quickly where our headquarters, Lake Mary, Florida, just north of Orlando, and just some of our locations. We have, in addition to this, we have 35 joint ventures that we do equipment all over the globe, and actually going to visit those, leaving tomorrow morning for a tour of Tokyo, Thailand, and India to get them ready for this influx of work coming. So our facility here is in Savannah, so it's Savannah Machinery Works. I sit in this facility. We located there. We had a choice back then to go to either Virginia, Charleston, Savannah, or Jacksonville. We chose Savannah, that we thought was the best location. So we built our factory there, 430,000 square feet, 80 plus acres, and we are rapidly growing now and adding employees there. So lots of product lines are built there, but our heavy duty gas turbines that we sell in the Americas, North and South America, are all built in this building. So the turbine itself, a complete turbine, goes out on a rail car, weighs about 800,000 pounds. So a very large piece of equipment. These are just some offshoots of our company. So MD&A, they do like other OEM, we call it, so non-Mitsubishi equipment. They take care of that. We do some battery storage, also hydrogen infrastructure, which we'll talk about, and then Ordon is our renewable energy company that we have in our portfolio. So state of the market, this is just quickly for people to see. So 450 megawatts is about 450,000 homes. Data centers that we're hearing about, small is 20 megawatts, medium 50 to 70, and large can be up to 500. So if you see that, a large data center could take all those homes off the grid. So that's why it's very important for us to build these turbines now in the U.S. And then just a comparison, 450 megawatts is one gas power plant at 10 acres of land. It's 112 4 megawatts gas turbines, 170 acres of land, and 5 acres solar. Our 5 acres is for a megawatt, so 2,250 acres for the same size power plant. So just to give you a relative land use for that.
Thanks, Jim. As Jim mentioned, Joe Sticca, Vice President for U.S. New Equipment Sales for Mitsubishi. I think Clay did a very good job explaining what's going on in the market. It really transitioned about a year and a half ago. A lot of really fundamental market drivers are contributing to what really is unprecedented load growth that we're seeing currently. So what that's translated to is from our projections, basically doubling the demand for gas turbine equipment. And what's driving that is most of this demand is needing firm dispatchable power, and it's really on a gigawatt scale. In order to build that type of power in a timeline that can be done, towards the end of the decade, which is where lead times are pushing most of the equipment today, it really has to be done with gas generation. And for reference, the 450 megawatts that Jim referenced on the last slide, that's roughly the size of one gas turbine. You get about 700 megawatts in a combined cycle configuration for that power. So looking at the market, the drivers, data centers are the largest contributor. I think everybody's seen that. It's been in all the headlines. It's pretty much all I talk about on a daily basis for the last year. But it's not only data centers. There were a lot of other drivers that were coming to this timeline that we're going to increase the demand for gas generation and particularly gas turbines. A really big factor is coal retirements. The typical cycle to develop a power plant is about 60 to 70 months for utility. And a lot of coal retirements were targeted towards the end of the decade for EPA regulation, ELG compliance. So there was a big spike in coal retirements in 2028 and 2029. All that development was going to start in 23 and 24. Right at the same time, we had reserve margins increasing due to weather events like Winter Storm Elliott. There's been onshoring of manufacturing, electrification. There's all these drivers are all kind of converging at the same time, and it's what's it's turned into is a significant crunch on the supply chain, and I think Georgia Power specifically has done a very good job of working through that, but all these drivers, we're not seeing them. I know you're seeing a lot in Georgia. I'm seeing it all across the U.S. Utilities all over the U.S. are facing the same issues, and it's really a global market too that's driving this now. there's demand up globally, and our supply chain is definitely at capacity, and lead times are extending because of that. There's a lot of investments in Savannah that are going to be done to increase that capacity, but it takes time to do it, and so it's definitely going to take time to catch up with where the demand is for electricity and where it's going. Just to touch on our gas turbine, it's got a lot of experience. Last year we had significant market share globally. Actually, in the Americas region too, we had market share as well. And what's shown here is our JAC gas turbine, which is the largest frame unit, roughly 450 megawatts, and that's really where we're focusing most of the sales now. Jim, I'll just touch on this. So Mitsubishi's, you saw our decarbonization goals, 2040 for a net zero target. We're focused on more than just gas generation equipment. We're focused on hydrogen production, storage, and transportation as well too, as well as ammonia. So within Japan, it's been a national project there for 20 plus years, and we have various technologies that we're developing. I think Jim has a slide later about our ACES project, which is we've deployed electrolyzers that are going to produce hydrogen stored in a salt cavern to power a JAC gas turbine. It'll start at 30% blend on hydrogen and eventually get to 100%, which the technology we're targeting to get to 100% combustion on hydrogen would be commercialized around 2030. So, yep, I'll let you finish up.
Okay, last couple slides here, just our projects. We'll go through these really quickly. This is in Takasago, Japan. So we're the only OEM. We actually operate a power plant on our property. We sell power to the grid. We bring it down every 3 months. We change parts. We keep refining it until we get it right. Then we start selling it to the market. Our first turbine doesn't go to a customer. So this is a great facility. What we've done there is build this whole hydrogen park now. So all the different types of hydrogen are made and stored here, and then we run it through the turbine to see how it operates. So that's all happening in Japan right now. Very good process there. And then McDonough, this plant is right down the road, about 15 minutes. If you don't know it's there, you've probably never seen it because it's hidden so well, but it's about 15 minutes west of here. And we have 6 gas turbines that operate in this plant. Last year we did a 20% blend of hydrogen. We ran it for an hour with a 7% reduction in carbon emissions. So we know it works. We've got that. Next thing is, as Clay touched on, is transmission. So lots of hydrogen has to flow there very quickly. You need a lot of it to run this turbine, and you have to have it in a transmission line. They cannot run through normal gas lines because the molecules are too small. So the transmission lines will have to be replaced. So, but we're gonna keep testing. We're doing another test this summer to validate again. It's gonna be a higher amount. We're not really advertising that yet, but we anticipate that's gonna be a good project for us, and then just further refine this for our company. Now this one that Joe touched on, this is in Delta, Utah. It's southwest Utah. And the beauty of this is, and I'm a little geeky here because of the engineering world, but this plant is specific. It was a coal plant. They wanted to turn to gas turbines. It's out in the middle of nowhere. So because our friends in California overbuilt their renewables and they're shedding power all day long with wind and solar, we were lucky enough that this plant, they reduced their power from AC down to DC, ran it through a DC line to California, and then back to AC to be used. Now all this renewable power, they're not using DC lines to shut the plant down. All our excess renewables that they shed are coming back through that line to the plant. We run 40 electrolyzers across the street, pump the hydrogen into the ground, into salt caverns, 2 of them that are about the size of the Empire State Building each, and then we just pump it in there, and then we're going to run the turbines off that right across the street. So no transmission needed for that plant specifically now, but that'll actually prove our whole process, and then we'll get into the subject to transmission. That'll be our next thing. But awesome plant. If you ever want to visit there or visit our plant, you're more than welcome to. And then this last slide, a lot of people hearing about this hydrogen hub, and all this really means is this is the one that's been passed now. It's in Northwest, Pacific Northwest. And this is just saying your challenges on the left is you've got trucking emissions. We want it to run on hydrogen. And the way to do that is you have to make areas where they can stop and refuel. So they're making these stops in these states to do this. So all these different processes that are on here, farming, busing, factories, they're making processes to be able hydrogen available to them. So very good, definitely a first step here to do that. There's more of these planned around the U.S. So all this working together, we're very confident we're going to have some hydrogen turbines here in the future. So I want to thank you very much for allowing us to speak today.
And I want to thank you for being here. And part of what the committee is going to work on, we're going to make several visits around the state, and we do plan on being down in your area and holding a couple meetings, at least one. Since we're short on time today, I'd love to have you all back in. My background, actually, was a mechanic in the Navy, so I got to play around with some gas turbine generators.
We got a lot of
And
new
then-
guys that work with us.
And then the other thing is I actually worked for Linde doing natural gas reforming. So hydrogen is something I'm familiar with.
And
as
if you're
well.
in the area, you want to have your meeting at our factory and do a tour, you're more than welcome to use our boardroom there.
We'll take you up on that. Thank
Yes,
you
sir.
for making the trip up here today, and have a safe trip home.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right,
Appreciate it.
thank you. All right, next on the list, let's see here. We have Amazon Web Services. Miss Maria, are you available? Well, come on up and talk. And again, I apologize. I knew you flew in, and we had to do the best that we do.
Which one is it? Do you remember the name of it?
Not on there.
Because these are the ones that I have.
And Maria, are you not loaded on the? Is your not loaded? Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm gonna let somebody else go, and then we'll let you double back around. Hey, Josh Levy with Data Center Coalition. I know you flew in from DC, so go ahead and have you come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I very much appreciate the opportunity to be here today and also the consideration for the travel. So I really appreciate that. Josh Levy with the Data Center Coalition. I know you all are not going to be doing a lot of questions today, but I brought along on my phone a friend. Kevin Hughes is Senior Vice President Public Affairs at Stack Infrastructure. They have facilities and have been in Georgia for a while now, but also have other facilities that are under construction, under development. And he is here as one of my technical experts, and I know he'll make himself available now or at a future meeting should there be any questions from the committee. I'm just going to quickly review a couple of slides for you all, and do feel free to stop me if you have questions or want me to drill down. So Data Center Coalition is an association of owners, operators of data centers. We have 35 members right now. Our members build, own, and operate data centers. They do so for themselves. They do so for one tenant in a single building. They do so for many tenants in a single building, or in some cases now for a single company or client on an entire campus with multiple buildings. They do this globally. They do this across the country, and they do this here in Georgia. And in fact, Mr. Chair, Georgia has become a national leader in the attracting data center investment and deploying the digital infrastructure that supports our innovation economy. We measure data center capacity in megawatts or gigawatts. In the U.S. market alone, McKinsey & Company tells us that we can expect the amount of data center capacity between 2024 and 2030 to grow from 25 gigawatts to 80 gigawatts, more than tripling during that 6-year period. The United States accounts for roughly 40% of the global data center market at this point. The data center industry has experienced explosive growth over the past decade. I do like to talk about some of the demand signals that our members are seeing to help explain why we're seeing this rapid deployment. In the next 5 years, consumers and businesses are going to generate twice as much data as all the data created over the past 10 years. So you're having this tremendous new data generation. We need places to store, places to process that data. The number of people that are accessing and creating data continues to grow. 67% of the global population is now online. That's a 45% increase since 2018. But Mr. Chair, our members are also thinking about that 1/3 of the global population that's not yet connected to the internet, and the fact that they are coming and they want to access these services as well. The average household has a total of 21 connected devices. I will confess to you, I'm the father of 2 teenagers. We have 50. With our new Bosch dishwasher, thermostats, household appliances, tablets, washers and dryers, cameras, window shades, we're all connected all the time. Back in 2012, we hit a milestone globally where we had the amount of data collected through the whole Genesis through 2012 was 1 zettabyte. We now are seeing multiple zettabytes exceeding 125 this year and projected to grow to exceed 500 zettabytes of information in 2030. I cannot explain to you just how much data that is, but I would tell you we're looking at approximately 23% compounded annually. Average household broadband consumption is continuing to grow substantially. We've had 9.7% year-over-year increase in average household broadband consumption, and we are seeing extreme power users, those using more than 5 terabytes or more per month, grow 77% year-over-year. The new products, experiences, and applications that are driving those demand, we see those every day. Cloud services, generative AI, entertainment, Internet of Things, streaming video, virtual augmented reality, autonomous vehicles, online learning, payment processing, and so many other things that drive our modern economy and our way of lives, and we're trying to accommodate that through this digital infrastructure. The U.S. Census Bureau tells us that between May 23 and May 24, the amount of capital investment in the ground data center construction nationally grew from $16 billion to $27 billion. That's a 68% increase nationally. Association of General Contractors charted that out along with some of the other industries and the construction they have in the ground. You'll see the data centers really stand out right now as a national construction opportunity, and you're seeing a lot of growth around that construction. When we look globally at data center markets, if you look over the 8th vertical bar from the left is Atlanta, and you'll see that we're very much on the map here in Atlanta in terms of the amount of load we're supporting. Virginia, clearly the largest market still globally, but I would also turn your attention to number 2 and 5, Beijing, Shanghai. We continue to see a lot of international investment in data center infrastructure, in the infrastructure required to support AI. We're certainly hearing quite a bit of that now from the White House, from President Trump, trying to determine how we can make sure that we're resourcing AI, not just for economic competitiveness, but for our collective national security. Recently, former acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf did an op-ed talking about that international race for sourcing AI and the importance to all of us. When we talk about data center investment, about 8-10 years ago, we would have talked about primary markets, and that would have been most of the map, 8 jurisdictions that really tend to get most of the investment. When we look at those jurisdictions, about 48% of the primary market capacity is in Northern Virginia. You will see that as of the first half of 2024, 6% of that was in the Atlanta area. Mr. Chair, I do want to share with you that we're seeing another trend. You've additionally seen them. Some of the analysts now are not just talking about the Northern Virginia market, but the Commonwealth of Virginia overall, as we're seeing more areas, rural, suburban, places across the state begin to get that investment. I think you're starting to see that certainly prove out in Georgia as well. From Rome to Richmond County and Bartow County to Bullock County, we're seeing, Coweta, Floyd, and other places where you're seeing public announcements now of data center investment, and certainly we're seeing that begin to spread across other parts. We've seen investment also gravitate towards secondary markets, and I've listed some of those just to give you all some context. That's really been a phenomenon over the past 4 years or so. Central Washington, Austin, Southern California, Houston, Denver, Minneapolis, Charlotte, Raleigh. But increasingly, we are seeing absorption of data center space outside the 10 largest markets, and you're seeing those really occur nationally. At least 23 states now have data center investment either inside currently or announced and deployed, and I expect you'll continue to see that continue to expand given the need for more data center capacity. Mr. Chair, I'd also just point out data centers are not monolithic, and I think it's important to recognize, even as you look at the buildings, you think about what's inside those buildings. If you were to go to Northern Virginia, the largest market, 82% of the deployment there is cloud infrastructure, cloud services. You go to New Jersey, you're going to get 35% banking and financial, you're going to get 60% tech, 5% healthcare. When you look at Atlanta, it's a lot of local businesses and a lot of local services that are being supported here. 5% banking and financial services, 5% retail, 10% entertainment, 5% telecom, 20% technology, and then, of course, the cloud. And I think that really speaks to the diversity of customers that we have in the data centers here. So I do want to take a moment just to talk about why data centers, because we are seeing so much interest among states and local governments in trying to bring data center investment nationally. I would tell you that data centers are a significant driver of the economy nationally, certainly of Georgia's economy, and I'll share with you in just a moment a slide from PricewaterhouseCoopers that we just got done relaying the economic benefits here in Georgia. Data centers enable the digital infrastructure that supports the applications individuals, organizations, and businesses rely on. We just saw, federal, state, and local governments, cybersecurity, healthcare, AI, financial services, Recently, the National Association of Manufacturers did some comments to the Federal Department of Commerce on the need to support AI and data center infrastructure nationally. And they said there's really 3 reasons they, the manufacturers, are weighing in. 1, manufacturers build all the inputs for data centers, whether it's the equipment, the fixtures, the servers inside, those are manufactured. 2, the digitization of manufacturing is increasingly relying on data centers to provide those efficiencies and international competitiveness. And the manufacturers observe that even AI has become integral to modern manufacturing, from product design to shop floor operations to supply chain management. So we're really pleased to see the way that this industry is helping to drive so many others. And then finally, they represent huge capital investments. If I was here a few years ago, I would have told you 300 million, 400 million. We're seeing $1 billion, we're seeing 10 billion. We're now seeing investments through Stargate and others, $100 billion projects that are being announced, and I think that's continuing to really attract a lot of attention. Also, the generation of substantial tax revenue. PricewaterhouseCoopers tells us Georgia in 2023 saw $1.8 billion in state and local tax revenue as a result of the data center industry. That's direct and indirect from all the spin-off activity and the ecosystem data center support. That's going to capture sales tax on construction materials and fixtures. It's going to capture sales tax and franchise fees on electricity. Data centers use power. Data centers pay sales tax on that power and franchise fees on that power. It's going to include income tax from companies subject to the income tax, and of course individuals, and then property taxes and the spin-off there. And then finally, I would just leave you with the idea that data centers build and support larger ecosystems of suppliers and service providers. PricewaterhouseCoopers tells us every job inside a data center supports at least 6 jobs outside that data center in the overall economy. That's going to include construction, that's going to include maintenance, operations, and ongoing support for the data centers. I'll give you one example. I spoke yesterday to SteelFab, which does steel fabrication. They have a plant in Dublin, which they said is their 4th largest plant nationally. They have now done 16 data centers in Georgia out of that plant that they're providing that infrastructure for. 120 employees, 30 more in an office they have in Norcross. So we're seeing that whole ecosystem and supply chain really continue to develop. Wyndham Hotels just said during their earnings announcement last week, they're seeing significant growth in data center markets. Specifically, and they're seeing that as a phenomenon now that they hadn't necessarily anticipated, but it's that construction and operational capacity there. So PricewaterhouseCoopers tells us Georgia's data center industry does 30,070 direct jobs in the state, 176,000 plus indirect, which is direct, indirect, and induced jobs, $14.1 billion in labor income, 25.7 in GDP in 2023, and as I indicated, 1.8 billion in state and local tax revenues. I would just put an asterisk there and tell you we've asked PricewaterhouseCoopers to break out the difference between state and local, and we're looking forward to bringing that back to you once we're able to get that. Data centers are also very energy efficient. Back in 2010, most data processing was done in server halls or smaller data centers within larger institutions, banks, insurance companies, and so on. Now it's really centralized. By 2018, most of the data center computing took place in larger cloud facilities. During that time, the amount of compute rose 550%. The amount of energy consumption grew 6%. And that's because when you're able to process at scale and maintain those servers, you can leverage design equipment and other things to ensure that you're optimizing efficiency. That's incredibly important to our businesses. Our company's power is one of the largest drivers of operating costs, and they want to keep that cost as low as they can. Tenants coming into our facilities typically will pay the cost of power as a pass-through cost. They want to know that they're going to be paying a reasonable amount, so we are trying to be as energy efficient as we can. Data centers also support energy efficiency across the economy. You cannot have smart thermostats, smart meters, managed EV charging, smart lighting, grid-enhancing technologies without the digital infrastructure our members are deploying, and we're really proud to be able to provide that. Couple questions on resource management or points, and then I'll conclude, Mr. Chair. After nearly 2 decades of relatively flat electricity consumption, we are experiencing a significant national increase in power demand driven by several economic growth trends: onshoring of new manufacturing, widespread building and vehicle electrification, hydrogen fuel production, and then the growth in demand for data center services, as I illustrated. Supporting this electricity demand through timely and prudent investments in new generation, transmission, and distribution infrastructure, it's essential to our national economic growth, our global competitiveness, our national security, but also to Georgia's economic growth and competitiveness. And the challenge of the low growth and resource adequacy that we're seeing, we're going to require a concerted effort to tackle. And we recognize that growth comes with a lot of challenges. Data centers are key players in the transformation of the power sector. Our industry is eager to contribute to solutions. We want a reliable, affordable, adequate power grid for all consumers. We don't want to overbuild. We're large power payers, and we want to make sure it's right-sized. But we've also seen on the other side when you don't have enough grid resources and you have a data center that has to wait 4, 5, 6 years to get power, and the consequences to investors and others in trying to wait for that time frame. Finally, I want to just reiterate that our members are committed to paying their full cost of service and working with the Public Utility Commission and their proceedings to ensure that that happens. We also were asked about water. Responsible, efficient use of energy and water are our priorities. Servers generate heat. Heat requires cooling. There are trade-offs between water and energy usage to consider when data centers design and operate their facilities. There's no one-size-fits-all solution for cooling. There's different technologies and designs that can be deployed. Innovation's actively occurring in this area. You're seeing direct-to-chip cooling. You're seeing servers that are putting vats of liquid to cool them. So I would encourage continuing to follow that innovation. And I would just tell you the best approach often depends on local factors: humidity, climate temperature, and availability of water in a particular jurisdiction.
And we appreciate that, because I can tell you this is going to be the beginning of a couple conversations. And one thing you did hit on is this is a lot of times data centers are the ones that get kind of the most attention, but the speakers and the House leadership, I think, have done a really good job of identifying the fact that this isn't exclusive to data centers. This is kind of a transformation of the way that we handle energy management in the state and across the states. So thank you, but in the interest of time, I have to give this room up at 3:30 no matter what. Yep. So we're going to let Ms. Maria with AWS speak.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you.
See if I can quickly transform this into one. There we go. Let's see if that works. All right, perfect. Thank you so much for having me today and for the invitation, Chairman. My name is Maria Saab. I represent Amazon Web Services here in Georgia. I want to just talk today about AWS, our operations, and speak to some of the innovations that we are incorporating into our facilities to encourage efficient and sustainable use of utilities such as energy and water. First, I just want to share, if many of you don't know, recently AWS announced it will be investing $11 billion here in Georgia to build AWS infrastructure. This infrastructure will be used to support cloud computing and AI technologies. These investments are going to be going in Butts and Douglas counties, and we're extremely excited about the opportunity to make for the first of this kind investment here for Amazon Web Services. Many of you know what data centers are, but you might not know that within Amazon.com is this force, AWS. Since 2006, we have been offering the secret sauce to Amazon.com, which is the back-end infrastructure technology that we power there. We launched AWS knowing that we could provide developers and businesses with web services to fit their needs. Today, AWS is the world's largest provider of cloud services, and we are lucky to service customers across all kinds of industries, no matter the size and no matter the demand on our service. I want to highlight also that many people don't know that utility providers are also customers of cloud service providers. They are leveraging unique technology services to improve outcomes for their customers. So that might mean reducing time and cost to utility repair. It might be to use smart-enabled technologies to help offer better delivery of service, help reduce costs for customers, and we're happy to have some of those customers like ExxonMobil, BP, General Electric, Pacific Gas and Electric, Hess, NREL, and local utility providers. I do want to highlight that on this slide is a cumulative economic impact investment from AWS across the United States over a roughly 10-year period. We have had the chance to contribute about during that time, $109 billion into the United States, and since then we've made additional announcements in several new places, including Georgia. So in order to provide the technology services we do to the millions of active customers worldwide, we build and operate a global infrastructure made up of, as we're here to talk about in some cases, data centers. They serve as a critical backbone to supporting basic technology functions like compute, processing, storage, or even more complex services like AI and machine learning, while also keeping ours and your data secure to maintain low latency and ensure reliability. A data center is made up of thousands of pieces of equipment, including computer servers, storage devices, networking infrastructure, cooling systems, and backup power systems. These component parts often require use of utility services like power and water to support operations, much like any other functional facility. Design and engineering thus form a really important part of our operations. We focus on various layers of the facility to draw out operational efficiencies across each of those layers. This creates a value proposition not just for AWS, but also for the customers that utilize AWS services, which I will discuss in just a bit. I do want to highlight that in our design, we are seeking to be less carbon intensive, and we're designing from the ground up. Recently, we've announced new components in power, cooling, and hardware design aimed at doing just that, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. We're also designing our own purpose-built chips, servers, racks, and other infrastructure to be more efficient and last longer. This is intended to continuously improve power efficiency through our facilities. And finally, we're also keeping our technologies in use longer by designing them better, operating them longer, and recovering more of our hardware and materials as part of our AWS circularity efforts. These designs directly inform how we manage the use of resources and utility services. We are designing data centers that provide efficient, resilient services while also minimizing our environmental footprint. As it says here on the slide, this includes energy efficiency, water stewardship, and lower carbon emissions. In 2023, Amazon was able to achieve powering its global operations with 100% renewable energy. This is made up of our ability to purchase renewable energy credits, but also actually investing in operating large-scale renewable projects. In fact, in Georgia, we are lucky to have about 9 solar projects that create about 588 megawatts of power, which is equivalent to powering 140,000 homes. I'll just briefly touch upon this since I know we don't have too much time, but I just want to draw upon the fact that using a data center actually creates a lot of energy efficiency for the customers that host in our facilities. Moving IT workloads to the cloud provides significant efficiency. Running workloads is up to 4.1 times more energy efficient than on-premise. Just to visualize, many of you are quite young, but for those of us who've lived through the Stone Age, you'll remember a time where you had multiple servers plugged into some closet or up on desks. If we were to think about a world where data centers didn't exist, you'd have more of that. More people and organizations plugging in servers to effectuate the basic functions of technology we use today, chat, email, and online learning, or just regular workflow. Those organizations are not preoccupied with energy efficiency. That is not their main mission. And so companies like AWS and other members of the Data Center Coalition, we work to ensure energy efficiency through scale. I also just want to share just how practically this looks for all of you sports fans here in Georgia. You might find it interesting that in order to telecast one sports game, you are going to produce 2.05 metric tons of carbon dioxide, which in order to offset, you'd have to plant 34 trees that live for about 10 years. So that's just for one sports game. So just to think about, the technology capabilities required for that. Last year, the NHL hosted one full game completely over AWS. So if you can think about that, just the amount of cost savings and emission savings and the trees that relates to. So I mentioned that we are drawing out efficiencies at every layer. At AWS, that's every corner of our facility, but every segment of our servers. We have developed and invented these unique chips that help draw double-digit reductions and improvements and optimizations in compute power and reductions in energy consumption and also cost savings. What we're trying to do is to ensure every material we're using to run our workloads are using power more effectively with less energy, and then also that at scale helps us to achieve cost savings. I won't dwell on this slide all too long, But most people don't know that in adopting cloud services, you are actually obtaining greater energy productivity. We worked with Telecom Advisory Services last year to commission a study, and the general point is that by moving one country's cloud adoption rate up by 10%, the country's energy productivity increases by $14.6 per megawatt hour on average, and this can contribute up to $216.8 billion in GDP. When we think about that in the context of Georgia, a 10% increase in cloud adoption actually would result in a $42 per megawatt hour energy productivity enhancement and would result in a $3,370.4 million increase in GDP. So pretty significant. I know we are all focused on water, but I do want to talk about water at our facilities. The choice of how you cool a data center is with power or with water. And at AWS, we often rely upon water as a more sustainable and efficient use of resources, and certainly power. We start with the water efficiency as part of our design. In most of our regions, we are using evaporative cooling design, which uses a fraction of the water that traditional cooling does. In switching to this format, we've reduced water, like in places like California, we've reduced water usage by up to 85%. We also track water use in real time and have automated alarms that alert operators when we're using more water than we should. So we're doing what we do for our customers and using our services the same way. We use treatment to maximize the number of times we can cycle water through our cooling system, so again, extracting as much of utilization of the water as possible. And here, what we plan to do here in Atlanta is we plan to utilize free air cooling during cooler periods. So we anticipate being able to use that about 94% of the time. This means that for 6% of the time we would be using water to then cool our facilities. At Amazon, we have been happy to report our water use efficiency score this year. It currently stands at about 0.18. So we at AWS prioritize the use of sustainable sources of water like recycled water whenever we can. The standard practice is for data center operators to use clean water for cooling, but AWS is working to change that. We can use lower quality water and leave the high quality water use for other or corollary uses. 24 of our data centers worldwide solely use recycled water, which is treated sewage, for cooling. The water is treated to a high quality that is safe to use in the data center, and sometimes when we run this water through some of our facilities, we are actually able to return it back cleaner than when it came in, which is a net positive to communities through some of the community programs that we have.
Maria?
You want me to close up?
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I've got one left, and we're going to go from 10 minutes to 5 because somebody else has got this. Mayor Johnson.
I'll just end that in addition to water, we have a water positive program which seeks to deliver water back to communities in the same amount that we operate, and we're making significant progress towards that. And then finally, our AWS operations are within the auspices of our Paris Climate Pledge, our Amazon Climate Pledge. We're working to be net zero carbon by 2040. So,
thank you. And like I said, this is kind of the primer meeting, so thank you for being a resource, and we'll be happy to reach out to you. My friend at the GMA here, Jim, I apologize, y'all. We had this room for 2 hours, but due to some shortages on meeting space, we had to give up a half hour, and then we got brought in on the backside. So thank you for bringing, Mayor Johnson, thank you for being here today. I'd love to hear about some local impacts of data centers specifically. Fortunately, said I can only give you 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and delighted that you're interested in hearing the local perspective and hearing from the local partners. Cities are a small part of the land of Georgia, only 9% of the land, but we make up about 45% of the population, 70% of the jobs in the state. Cities really are an economic engine for the state. Cities partner with the state constantly on economic development projects. trying to bring the local perspective to make sure that all of the local needs of the community are taken into account when any type of project is brought to a community. I brought Mayor Ed Johnson, who's the mayor of Fayetteville. He's been the mayor of Fayetteville since 2016. He is a retired commander from the U.S. Navy, pastor in the community. But certainly Fayetteville has been at the lead of economic development, not just with data centers, also with movie studios, with the soccer training complex, and most recently, of course, a very large data center project. So I'm going to ask Mayor Johnson to share a few words.
Well, Mayor Johnson, welcome to the podium, shipmate.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Listen, you've already heard the 30,000 view on data centers. I just wanted to give you a practical, real-time example of what's happening with data centers in the state of Georgia and how they're contributing such dynamic economic contribution to the state of Georgia. City of Fayetteville, working with the Fayette County Development Authority, acquired 120 acres of property on the west side of the city of Fayetteville. As a result, they asked us to annex specifically the county commissioners as well as the Fayetteville City Council emphasized that the property should be used to advance technology. And so the Development Authority went out and pursued some technology opportunities, and one of them was QTS, which is now in the process of being built out in the city of Fayetteville. Is going to be the largest data center in North America. When they're built out completely, they will have 10 million feet of space in the city of Fayetteville to operate data center equipment. And they have multiple clients of the Fortune 500 companies as well. And so the city of Fayetteville over the last 6 months did some calculation, and we realized that if we had taken that 120 acres of property and allowed them to build homes there, it would have been a tremendous impact on our infrastructure. It would have been a tremendous impact on traffic as well as our school system. Thankfully, QTS has come in. That property that would have acquired in 2023 only taken in $36,000 of tax. Well, in the last 6 months that QTS has been there, we have now received $1.13 million of property tax on the property alone. And so once the building's up and operated, you can imagine we will be approaching, almost 256% increase in tax revenue for the city of Fayetteville, which is going to allow us to do a lot more for the citizens. This is just an example that we hope that the committee will consider when you consider data centers in the state of Georgia. Thank you very much for your time, Chairman and committee, and hopefully we've added something to the discussion.
You have, thank you. And I think one of the most important things is getting how it affects the local perspective and the local economies. That's definitely part of the picture that we need to be looking at as the committee as we're moving along in our work over the next year. So thank you again. This was a primer. This gives some good perspective of local impacts. Jim, we'll obviously be talking more as we're working through this process. So thank you, and I apologize for you having to jam that in 5 minutes, but this is
no problem, sir. Got a lot more to share with you, but I hope you get the snapshot real quick.
Absolutely, and for my friends at Environment Georgia, Science for Georgia, and let's see, Environment Georgia, Science for Georgia. That's two of them I got on there. I apologize that you all don't have the opportunity to speak today, but we will give you an opportunity. I commit to that. So I appreciate you all working with me, and I'm sorry I have to bump you, but this is where we're at. So with that being said, I think we've covered everything we can on the agenda today, and this meeting is adjourned.